Times Influence Initiative.
The 5th edition of the India Economic Conclave, a unique thought leadership platform, brought together policymakers, CEOs and global leaders to discuss key issues related to business, economy and governance. In this episode, we focus on the role of women in a rising India and on the new frontiers of growth and investment in the country.
Well, now our next panel celebrates the best that India Inc. has seen. These icons of industry have not only broken the glass ceiling, they have pioneered women power in India's boardrooms. Truly a rise with India's story, these women have made the boardrooms wiser and more equal.
So, how was the journey to the top, and is India ready for a more equal board? We debate that with 3 special names. Put your hands together for former SBI Chairman Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya, Biocon's Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, and Sunita Reddy of Apollo Hospitals. And moderating the debate will be Mirana's Executive Editor, Faye D'Souza.
So I'm very glad to not just have a panel of women, but such amazing women, women that I've personally looked up to and studied from. So I'm so glad to have a conversation with all 3 of you. McKinsey did a study to say that if India were to include more women or equal women in our workspaces, we could add between, and I'm not exaggerating, 16 to 60% to our GDP. Because it is those men, that's how much power we have underutilized in our country. And what's even more disappointing is apparently our participation of women in the labor workforce has dropped in the last decade from 43% to 31%. And there are various reasons for that, both in rural and in urban India. And this is unfortunately across all sections of society. So what are we doing wrong? And if our aim really is to add 6 to 60% to our GDP, then really including women is the first step, because this would have solved almost all the problems. So I want to start with my panel at this point. Ms. Bhattacharya, if I'd start with you. I know that you worked very hard also to increase the number of women working at SBI, but when you started off as GM, there weren't too many other women, and you had to travel, you had to manage a lot of things. We expect women who are working, and I know there are a lot of them here today, to be able to balance life and work. We never ask a man to do so. A woman is expected to find time within the 24 hours to stay on top of work and to stay on top of the house. How important is it for working men to also multitask and perhaps take some of that load in order for women to be able to spend more time, energy, and effort in the workplace?
Well, I think, you know, the newer or rather the more recent generations, we are seeing men becoming more of multitaskers. Our generation didn't have that advantage. And it didn't have that advantage because probably our spouses were brought up in households where the men didn't do household work, okay, where the work was strictly segregated for external work and internal work, and women did the internal work and the men did the external work. But I think, you know, with time that is changing. Having said that, in India, it is still very, it's a given that women are still the primary caregivers. And when I was heading HR in our bank for a little while, for about a year and 10 months, we did a survey to find out when were the women actually dropping off the workforce. And we found that there were 3 times in a woman's life when they would drop off the workforce. One was, of course, the biggest one was during the childbearing years, when the children were very small. The second one, strangely, and this is only true probably in India and a few other Asian countries, was when the child was between the classes 9 to 12. Because basically what happens then, especially in urban India, all the children need to go to the IITs or needs to become a doctor. And during the coaching, it's supposed to be the mother's duty to chauffeur them around and to be around with a cup of Complan and to wake them in the morning and ensure that they get sleep. And just in case that the child doesn't make it and the mother doesn't do these duties, then it's the mother who will always feel guilty that I didn't support my child enough. And the third stage that they were dropping out in were when the parents or parents-in-law fell sick. Because again, as you know, in India, geriatric care is very costly. So most people get taken care of at home. And at home, again, you don't get that kind of help. And many a woman worker would feel very guilty about leaving a very sick old person at home all by themselves in the care of hired help. So what we came up with was, we came up with a 2-year sabbatical that could be taken for any of these kinds of occasion. And we said it was a sabbatical for child or elderly care. And I think, you know, in the very 2 years, I think we took a review after 2 years, and we had saved something like 670 jobs just by doing this sabbatical.
Ms. Shaw, when you started off, is a completely different prejudice. Women were not welcome in boardrooms. They didn't know what to do with you when you came back with your education and said, I want a job. Nobody understood what you meant. What was this woman doing asking for jobs in male-dominated spaces?
Well, yes, I think I can speak for all of us here that, yes, we were a rare breed when we started off in our careers. But I think today things are so very different. It's great to see so many women in the workplace, at least women appearing in many boardrooms. That's very refreshing. But yes, when I started my business, and I'm sure Arundhati and Sunita, you know, have very similar stories to tell, that it was a sort of a credibility building exercise, you know, where I think you had to prove that, you know, you could do certain things and you could manage a business and that you could, you know, look at strategies and you could actually think about businesses the way men do. I think those were the kind of credibility, you know, sort of issues that we had to face when we were building up companies.
Ms. Reddy, this space that you are in, the space of healthcare, your father has always pushed yourself and your sisters to do more in the business. But have you noticed, I mean, is that a family-specific thing? For those of us who had parents who pushed us and said, you know what, it doesn't matter, you can do whatever you set your mind to. What have you done with Apollo to include more women in the workspace and make sure that they stay until management?
57% of our workforce are women, and this is probably because we have a lot of nursing. But I think we as leaders understand why we need women to be there and what we can do to make them stay. So, you know, the introduction of creches so that when they go through this phase of childbirth, we're there to look after their children. The skilling of women is so important that we cannot underestimate. The ability to teach them, you know, about this whole new digital world, to work with computers, to work with the internet, I think is improving their qualifications on the job. And third, just setting by example, because, you know, you can't sit there and tell them there's a glass ceiling and this is where you're going to stop. So our nurses have the opportunity to become managers, and we all must learn that, you know, along with equal opportunities, there should be equal commitment and equal knowledge. And that's what we do to provide women with equal knowledge so that the equal commitment comes.
Well, in most of our industries today, media included, we have a lot of women on the floor joining the workforce. But as you go further and further up the pyramid, you'll see the C-suite or the people who are making executive decisions are invariably all men. How do we correct that, Ms. Shaw?
You know, you've got to have a set of HR policies that really look at these kind of issues. Today, I think more than ever, there is a strong focus on leadership development amongst your women executives. And I think we as a company certainly are spending a lot of time grooming young women at certain mid-management levels and beyond to really come up the sort of the levels and make sure that we've sort of basically said that, that we would like to have a fairly balanced leadership team in 5 years' time.
Well, we discovered very interestingly in the last couple of months that the national political parties in our country don't have ICCs where women can complain about sexual harassment. All of the big ones, including the BJP and the Congress, and there are a couple of them who've started off, they haven't created ICCs. They have party offices where women work. They have party workers who are women, but they did not feel the need to create a complaint cell, which is, by the way, the law. Do you believe, Ms. Bhattacharya, that we have safer workplaces now? We do know, of course, that even within the PSU sector and specifically in government offices, the rules are not being followed like they should be followed. How do we make workspaces safer for women so they don't have to quit because they feel unsafe?
You know, of course, in the PSUs or the PSBs, all of these laws, they are very strictly implemented. We have a sexual harassment committee and we have it as per the law, and there are complaints and they are looked into in very great detail and action is taken wherever warranted. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, it's a question of creating awareness. Awareness amongst the men as to where the line should be drawn, and awareness amongst the women that they are not helpless. That if something happens, they have somebody to go to, and that they should actually take action. If we have a forum where the women can actually give out or talk about their problems, what's holding them back? Why are they leaving? What can be done to stop that? Then we can continue to have more and more people continuing on in the workforce.
Ms. Reddy, I want your advice for families, because while, you know, women can go out and do all of these things, it's very important to have a family that pushes, that supports, that believes in what you want to believe. So your advice for the women who are out there who are trying to find their way to the top, and the families who may or may not be supporting them at this point?
So I think to all women, don't expect a perfect work-life balance, because every day is a new day. And I think that we have to be able to meet challenges. So if you put rigid expectations, it's going to be very confrontational for you. The second thing is, you know, I don't think we should put women in boxes and say, this is what is expected of you, because women have unlimited potential, and I think they should use this opportunity to reach that unlimited potential.
I'm so grateful to the three of you for giving us your time this afternoon. It has been an extremely educative and enlightening experience. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience. Thank you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, then, to the 5th edition of Times Network's India Economic Conclave, presented by Capital First and powered by the Raven Group. We're now focusing on the new frontiers that will drive growth and investment in India. For good or bad, we are seeing some interesting, tough, rather disturbing trends. From the call for a unified market, nations are closing their doors with a protectionist tint, one after the other. The new narrative for growth against the backdrop of the New World Order. More importantly, what should India do to attract top dollar into the environment? That's what our next session is all about.
We've been debating, discussing, brainstorming on how India is going to be joining this elite club of where 5 trillion is going to come from. At the same time, we have the Narendra Modi government talking about Make in India, giving a boost up to entrepreneurship. At the same time, all of you are hoping to invest and get the Indians to invest in all of your countries. So, Your Excellency, I'll begin with you. How important is India for Uzbekistan? What can we do for trade when it comes to the two countries?
Between Uzbekistan and India, we see a lot of opportunities for trade, economic cooperation and investment. When we talk about the growth of trade and economic opportunities, you always look for new markets. You always look for new opportunities, and this is where Uzbekistan can offer a lot as a market and also as a destination for investment. We have created more than the 15 free economic zones, 7 of which are particularly focused on pharmaceuticals, which is one of the strengths of Indian economy, as we see. So in these free economic zones, the investors and the residents of the free economic zones are given a number of benefits, a number of privileges. These include exemption from various taxes, or providing land for a long term on free of charge, and providing the assistance on setting up your business.
Okay, so that's something you're looking at. Speaking of pharmaceuticals, Dana, if I could come to you, we have seen that between India and Israel when you look at Sun Pharma, Taro, Teva. Small, could be bigger. Is there an opportunity to play with? I know Israel is trying to pioneer R&D innovation.
I think when we talk about India and Israel, it's not only pharmaceutical, and there is innovation in many places where India can benefit. And what we see is what we think where both countries can grow together is cooperation in this R&D. On January, our Prime Minister was here, and he announced with the Prime Minister of India about this R&D program between the two countries. And we really promote and trying to encourage Indian company to do R&D together with Israeli company, where they get funded by the both governments, so they get money to work together, which is amazing. And while Israel has the new innovation, new product, India is the market. And we see how we can bring this together, and it's amazing.
Okay. Coming to you now, Annie, you are a strong trading partner. I think almost $8 billion in trade, over $8 billion in trade. So if you're going to enter this 5 trillion club, we have to find new markets, and we also have to grow the ones that we already have, which would be Canada. The Canadian pension funds are investing a lot in India. Where do you see the next wave of growth? How do you see this getting bolstered?
Yes, the relationship is strong. It keeps going stronger. In the last few years, we've seen a lot of the pension funds investing here, up to $20 billion invested in India in the recent years. India has a lot of potential. The challenge will be to bring to 10, 12% growth. And how to do that? You need to start with empowering every caste, every class, any gender, so that they are all participating towards the growth of the economy. Inclusiveness.
Gary, if I could come to you, in the last couple of years, did you look at maybe setting up factories in India? Are you now looking? Where do things stand? Or do you think it's still the same problems, lack of capital, license Raj, difficult to get permits, environmental problems, etc.?
We have very seriously looked at setting up new manufacturing units in India. What has deterred us is not a license Raj, nor a lack of capital, but the governmental policies. So you talked about energies, and I believe that and a very strong proponent of this is that the word energy is being replaced by the word electricity. And we are in the electrical field. Now, the policies of the government are knee-jerk. So, sometimes you find that on the renewable side, they bring in some safeguard duties, they bring in some anti-dumping duties. It's not a long-term policy. And if they are to do that, and that's what has deterred us from setting up new manufacturing capacities out here, is that we find that if the government was very stable and very strategic in its thought process as to what they want to achieve, and then they followed up completely with that, we would find a lot more investments happening in the country.
Look at the Indian diaspora that we have in Canada. It's an obvious candidate for improving trade relations, of doing more business. Mr. Trudeau was in India for a very, very long visit as well. You know, one of our most vulnerable points on the economy has to be energy. We're one of the largest consumers of energy, but we're a net importer of energy. And you have all the shale gas, you're doing remarkable work in renewables as well. Do you see area for cooperation and, on that front?
I believe there is cooperation happening between the two countries. We have a lot of natural resources and energy is part of it. The reality is clean technology is also part of where we want to go further. And I believe that some energy are geopolitically dependent and others can be where collaboration can happen. So yes, and we have investment from Indian firms in the energy business in Canada. So yes, we can continue.
So you told us how pharmaceuticals can, you're looking to attract pharmaceuticals in Uzbekistan. Is Uzbekistan looking to increase investments in India? Is business from Uzbekistan looking at all? Anything in India?
You know, of course, you know, business is always two ways, of course. And I know if we talk about the areas which represent us, for us, a big interest, we can talk about, you know, textile, we can talk about the energy, traditional the energy, and of course, renewable energy fields. So these are the areas that where we can benefit from each other.
And with that, I'm being told time's up. So many thanks to all my panelists for joining us here. And ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all of them. Thank you.
Next week on the India Economic Conclave, we bring you power-packed panel discussions on artificial intelligence and the new growth engines of the digital world.
Times Influence Initiative.